Good morning, and again, thanks for allowing me a few minutes here. As I was, hearing everybody up here this morning, the thing that dawned on me is that, with all the exciting things that they're doing and some of the really cool things that are going on, it makes the box business seem a little less sexy. I mean, I know you find that hard to believe, Todd, but it really is a little, not quite as glamorous as I thought it was. But again, as I put my comments together, put my thoughts together, I thought, how do you take 10 random ideas and synthesize those or put them into some sort of a theme? And the theme that came to mind was engagement. We all look for it. It's kind of like respect. You can't demand it. You can't will it to be so. Engagement is like respect. You have to create it. You have to earn it. And the way that you find that engagement in your organization is through credible leadership. It is through creating culture, and then it's by sharing vision or getting everyone to adopt that same shared vision. A quote, and that's why this is up here, that I read in an article last week says, one of the most powerful leadership disciplines, the one that keeps people focused and pulling in the same direction, is to make an organization's purposes tangible. This is accomplished by translating the organization's mission into a set of goals and performance measures that make success concrete for everyone. So let's dive into that a little bit from a leadership standpoint. The first thing that you've probably heard me say before is disconnect to reconnect. Oops. Let me put this away. When I talk about disconnect to reconnect, it is you have to learn to listen and then listen to learn. And I think one of the things that I picked up, in that regard is you got to put this stuff away. You have to be able to truly communicate with people. That's the way we progress as a society, or in a micro way in our own companies. So if I look at a little over 40 years ago, there was a group of friends that set off on a bicycle trip headed for Alaska. At that time, it was basically bicycle, freight train, ferry, and homemade raft that took us from Springfield, Missouri, to the Yukon in Alaska, or the Yukon Territory, and then floating into Alaska on the Yukon River. The things you talk about disconnected. I mean, there was no cell phones. There was no telephone. There was no internet. So what we learned along the way was, if you really want to find out about what's going on around you, you better find a way to listen and learn and tell your own story. So we met an elderly man in central Kansas that remembered the first flight or the first plane that flew into his rural county. He then remembers the barnstorming that occurred in the Roaring '20s. Again, very exciting. We met a guy by the name of Bruce Hare. Bruce Hare was a helicopter pilot, and he was flying uranium prospectors into the wilderness in the Yukon every day as they were exploring for uranium. We traded him a ride on our raft for a helicopter ride, and he flew us up the Klondike River, where we got to see the gold dredges from the Klondike Gold Rush in the 1890s. We got to see those tailings. We heard those kinds of stories. We met a guy in Homer, Alaska by the name of Ewell Kilcher. Some of you may remember that name Kilcher, but Ewell Kilcher came to Alaska in 1936 as a Swiss immigrant, looking for a place to live off the land and raise his family in kind of an unencumbered way. Little did he know that his son would eventually be Otts Kilcher, who you probably have seen him on Alaska, The Last Frontier, and then also his granddaughter, Jewel, who became a pop star. So again, my comment there is you have to open up your ears and listen to what's going on around you. It will help define that style that you create, and it will also allow you to be a better person and a better communicator within your business or within your culture. So a couple of other little morsels, if you will, that go along with that leadership comment is, number one, live inside your skin. Remember that if you're genuine, it's much more comfortable for you, and it's much more comfortable for those around you. And it's just easier, frankly. The second thing is remember that you're not a big deal. You really aren't. This isn't about you. It's about the team that you support and that you're a part of. The results that will come from that team approach will be longer lasting, they'll be better, and you'll get a lot more buy-in. I guess the other thing that I would say is kind of like Brandy had said, is you need to learn to adapt. In fact, more than learn to adapt, you need to prepare to adapt, because that's what it's all about. You will adapt. It's just a matter of how prepared you are for that. I go back to 1978. A group of guys are on bicycles and they're headed generally northwest. When the wind was coming out of the west, we tacked north. We adapted. When we ran into weather or road conditions or travel hazards along the way, we actually jumped a freight train and we traveled by freight train across the upper plains and into the northwest. And then finally, we met a man in Juneau, Alaska. We had prepared when leaving Springfield, Missouri. We were prepared to ride our bicycles all the way to up the Alaska Highway and up into Alaska. We met a guy in Juneau, Alaska, actually a fireman, who said, I just built a raft, 6 by 8 foot raft, and floated on the Yukon for about a week. You guys ought to give it a try. So we thought, what the heck? So we built a 14 by 18 foot raft out of 2x4s and oil drums and floated for 30 days on the Yukon, 750 miles. And made our way into Alaska. So you talk about disconnected. That was completely disconnected. Two kind of closing thoughts, and that would be adopt a bias for action. That's kind of a mercy tenet, if you will. Get off the sidelines, get involved, be a part of your community. It's going to better everyone around you and yourself. And then finally, I would say, embrace the innocence of youth, the exuberance of youth, and the inquisitiveness of youth. Don't grow up too fast. Thank you very much.